The city skyline glittered in the distance as the towering glass headquarters of LNN, Liberal News Network, hummed with energy. Inside, under the bright, polished lights of Studio 5, Alex Grayson sat at his desk, reviewing his notes one last time. He wasn't just another TV host. He was the guy you called when you needed a conservative voice dismantled on live television. His sharp tongue and relentless questioning had made him famous. He prided himself on never losing control of an interview. And tonight, his producers had set up a perfect opportunity for him to do it again. The guest, Ryan Carter, a 17-year-old conservative activist who had gained traction on social media for his no-nonsense approach to politics. With his signature red MAGA cap and unapologetic stance on free speech, he had quickly become a rising voice for young conservatives. And to Alex, that was a problem. "This is going to be good," Alex muttered to himself, rolling a pen between his fingers. The producers had done their research. They had compiled every controversial clip, every tweet, every moment where Ryan had challenged progressive narratives. The plan was simple: back him into a corner, expose contradictions, make him stumble. A junior producer, Madeline, approached, adjusting her headset. "We're live in 5, Alex. You ready?" He smirked. This kid has no idea what he's walking into. Madeline nodded but hesitated before stepping away. "Be careful, though. He's sharp." Alex chuckled. "Please, he's a teenager. Twitter followers don't make you a political expert." The studio bustled with last-minute adjustments. Cameras rolled into position, teleprompters flickered, and the control room buzzed with excitement. Behind the scenes, the producers whispered among themselves, "He's too young. He won't handle the pressure. Alex is a pro. He'll eat him alive. If all goes well, we'll have sound bites for weeks." Then a hush fell over the room. The studio doors swung open, and in walked Ryan Carter. But something was off. Alex expected nerves, maybe sweaty palms, a hesitant step, or the typical wide-eyed look of someone about to be devoured by the mainstream media. But Ryan? He walked in like he owned the place, his posture straight, his expression neutral. His hands rested casually in his pockets as he scanned the studio with curiosity, not fear. And when he finally locked eyes with Alex, he did something no guest had ever done before. He smirked, as if he was the one in control. Alex felt a flicker of irritation but pushed it aside. He still held the cards. He still had the power, didn't he? The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2. The camera light blinked red. Showtime. Before we dive into this interview, ask yourself, how often do you truly hear both sides of a debate? Do mainstream media outlets present real, unbiased discussions? Or do they steer narratives to fit their agenda? When you see a conservative voice on a major network, is it a fair conversation or a setup designed to make them fail? Let us know in the comments. And now, let's begin. The bright studio lights cast a clean, professional glow over the sleek black desk where Alex Grayson sat, hands folded, his practiced smirk in place. The bold white letters on the screen behind him read, "Exposing Extremism, a one-on-one with young conservative firebrand Ryan Carter." A title carefully chosen by the producers. It wasn't an interview, it was an interrogation. Across from him, Ryan Carter sat still, composed, unshaken. He adjusted the cuff of his blazer as if he was settling in for a casual conversation rather than an on-air verbal battle with one of the most aggressive interviewers in the industry. Alex studied him. No nervous tics, no darting eyes, no fidgeting. This was wrong. This kid was supposed to be easy. The control room was silent, watching. The live comment feed had already started flooding in. Oh man, this kid is about to get destroyed. Why do they keep giving these MAGA types a platform? Watch Alex demolish him in 3, 2, 1. The game was set. Alex made the first move. He leaned in slightly, his voice smooth, measured but sharp beneath the surface. "Ryan, thanks for being here." Ryan tilted his head slightly, offering a polite smile. "Appreciate the invite, Alex." Alex tapped his fingers against the table. The producers had prepped the perfect opening move. Frame Ryan as an unoriginal puppet, just repeating talking points from older conservatives. Make him prove otherwise. "You've made a name for yourself as a young conservative voice, but let's be real," Alex began, his eyes scanning Ryan for a reaction. "A lot of people say you're just repackaging outdated, extremist ideas with a fresh face. That you're not actually thinking for yourself. You're just a mouthpiece for older Republicans. What do you say to that?" A trap. A question meant to undermine his credibility instantly. The audience expected Ryan to fumble, to scramble, to rush into a clumsy defense. But he didn't. Instead, he let a beat of silence pass, just long enough to make Alex uncomfortable. Then he let out a small chuckle. "That's an interesting question, Alex." He leaned forward slightly. "Because I've noticed something. When a young progressive activist rises in politics, they're called a trailblazer, or the future of the country. But when a young conservative does the same thing, suddenly we're just mouthpieces." He tilted his head. "That's a little bit of a double standard, don't you think?" Boom. Alex's lips parted slightly, a hesitation. The live chat exploded. "Oh, he flipped that so fast." Not a bad comeback, but let's see if he keeps up. "He won't last. Alex will get him soon." Alex quickly recovered, adjusting his posture. "Fine, keep pressing." He went for round 2. "Okay, let's talk policy," he said smoothly, flipping his notepad open as if he had just been waiting for this moment. "You're against progressive economic measures, but the reality is most young people support them. Why should they listen to you, someone arguing against policies they believe will actually help them?" A loaded question. The implication? That Ryan was out of touch, arguing against his own generation's interests. But Ryan? He didn't flinch. He clasped his hands together and responded just as smoothly. "Well, Alex, young people don't just support ideas because they sound good. They support what actually works." He leaned in, lowering his voice slightly, making sure the next words hit their mark. "And if you look at the states that have implemented these so-called solutions, higher minimum wages, free college, universal income, you'll see the results. Rising costs of living, businesses leaving, and fewer job opportunities. Young Americans don't deserve feel-good slogans. They deserve real solutions." A direct hit. Alex's grip on his pen tightened. He masked his discomfort with a well-practiced half smirk. But inside, he could feel the control slipping. The live chat was changing. "Okay, I didn't expect this kid to actually make sense. Wait, he's kinda right though? No way Alex is letting him get away with this." The producers in the control room exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't going as planned. Alex had to regain control. He forced a quick laugh, shaking his head. "Ryan, let's be honest. Your party has struggled with young voters. The majority reject conservative policies on climate change, healthcare, social issues. So tell me, when you speak, aren't you just preaching to a shrinking audience?" A trap within a trap. If Ryan agreed, he admitted conservatism was dying. If he denied it, he sounded delusional. But Ryan didn't hesitate. He simply smiled. "Bryce, if we're being honest, let's actually be honest." The room went still. Young people aren't rejecting conservative values. They're rejecting a version of conservatism that hasn't been properly explained to them. Alex's smirk faltered, just for a second. If all they ever hear is a media narrative that paints one side as villains and the other as saviors, of course they'll lean left. The problem isn't the message. It's the messengers. And just like that, the entire conversation shifted. The control room was silent. The live chat was on fire. "Bro, this kid is not backing down." "Wait, why is he making sense? Am I conservative now?" "Yo, Alex, you good? You need some water?" Alex exhaled slowly through his nose. He wasn't used to being thrown off balance this early. And the worst part? He could tell. So could the audience. At this point, who do you think is really in control of this conversation? Is Alex still in command of the interview? Or has Ryan done something no one expected, taken control from the start? Let us know in the comments. And stay tuned, because what happens next changes everything. Alex Grayson could feel it now, control slipping between his fingers. He had come into this interview expecting an easy win, a young conservative out of his depth, stumbling through weak defenses. Instead, he was sitting across from a 17-year-old who wasn't backing down. The control room was dead silent. No frantic instructions in his earpiece, no producers reminding him to press harder. They were watching, just like everyone else. Alex's pen tapped once against the desk, a subtle sign that his mind was racing, looking for a way to turn the tide. He forced a quick laugh, masking his frustration. All right, Ryan, let's move beyond talking points. A classic tactic. Reframe the conversation as if his opponent was simply regurgitating rehearsed lines. Make it seem like he was the only one having a real discussion. Alex leaned forward, his voice adopting a sharper edge. You've been very critical of progressive policies. But let's talk about reality. Conservative-led states are struggling too. Poverty, education issues, economic downturns. Your side isn't exactly fixing everything. So tell me, are you really offering solutions, or just blaming the other side? A carefully worded attack. If Ryan admitted conservative states had problems, it was a win for Alex. If he denied it, he looked ignorant. Either way, Alex could regain his footing. But Ryan? He simply shrugged, as if he had already seen this move coming. That's a fair question. Alex blinked. That wasn't the response he was expecting. Ryan folded his hands on the table, keeping his posture calm and controlled. No side is perfect. You're right. Some red states struggle, some blue states struggle. The difference? He tilted his head slightly. We don't pretend our problems don't exist. We don't just throw more government at it and call it progress. Alex's smirk twitched, just barely. Ryan continued, his voice even, measured. Tell me something, Alex. If progressive policies work so well, why are so many people leaving California and New York for Texas and Florida? A counterpunch, not just defending, attacking back. The live chat went wild. Oh snap, did he just flip it? California about to feel real quiet right now. Alex did not see that coming, LMAO. Alex felt heat rising up his neck. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He had to push harder. Shifting gears, the personal attack. Alex took a slow breath, shifting his approach. If logic wasn't enough, emotion would do the trick. He lowered his voice, adopting an air of deep concern. Ryan, I have to ask you something serious. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Go for it. Alex glanced down at his notes, then back up, making it seem like he was about to say something profound. You talk about media bias, but let's be honest. You've made some pretty strong statements yourself. Some say your rhetoric is divisive, that you're fueling the very partisanship you claim to oppose. Do you take responsibility for that? A trap within a trap. This wasn't about his policies or ideas. It was about making Ryan sound dangerous. Make him walk back his words or double down and look extreme. The studio air felt thick. Ryan let out a soft exhale, not irritated, not nervous, just patient. Then he smiled. Alex, that's an interesting question. Alex felt his gut tighten. Ryan tilted his head, his voice casual but piercing. Do you ask progressive activists the same thing? Or does accountability only go one way? Silence. Alex opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He hadn't prepared for that. The control room froze. The live chat exploded. Yo, this kid is unstoppable. I think Alex just realized he walked into his own trap. Liberal journalists hate when you use their tactics against them. Ryan leaned back in his chair. He wasn't playing defense. He was leading the conversation now. See, that's the real issue, isn't it? Ryan continued, his tone calm, almost amused. When conservatives criticize the media, it's divisive. But when the media runs hit pieces full of half-truths and anonymous sources, it's called investigative journalism. Alex felt his pulse in his ears. He had one last play. All right, Ryan, he said, shifting in his seat. Let's talk facts. You've been accused of pushing misinformation, particularly on election integrity and media bias. Would you like to clarify some of your previous claims? A wide net. Not an accusation, just planting the seed of doubt. If Ryan tried to explain too much, he looked guilty. If he brushed it off, it looked like he was hiding something. Either way, Alex had him, or so he thought. Ryan didn't even blink. He let a moment of silence pass before answering. What's interesting, Alex, is that you're calling it misinformation without specifying what exactly was false. Alex's jaw tightened, just slightly. That's what the media does. You take a broad accusation, repeat it often enough, and expect people to just accept it as fact. Ryan's eyes locked onto his. So tell me, what exactly did I say that was false? Alex froze. The seconds ticked by. His producer's voice crackled in his ear. Move on, move on. He swallowed, then forced a weak chuckle. Well, Ryan, our viewers can judge for themselves. A retreat, a desperate pivot, and everyone watching knew it. Ryan sat calmly across from him, still composed, still in control. Alex? Not so much. At this moment, who do you believe? Is Ryan making fair points? Or is Alex exposing something deeper about how narratives are controlled? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because what happens next changes the entire game. Alex Grayson felt it now. The weight, the pressure, the slow creeping realization that this wasn't just another interview. This was a battle for control, and he was losing. His earpiece crackled again, a producer's voice clipped and tense. Find an opening. Take it back. But how? Every attack he had thrown, Ryan Carter had effortlessly sidestepped or reversed. The young conservative wasn't just holding his ground, he was winning over the audience. And Alex's job wasn't to lose. He took a slow breath. It was time to go for the jugular. Shifting strategy. The last-ditch effort. Alex straightened his posture, trying to look composed. All right, Ryan, let's cut through the slogans. Let's talk about who's really behind you. Ryan raised an eyebrow, but Alex pressed forward. You claim to be an independent voice, but let's be honest. You're backed by conservative donors. You get support from major right-wing figures, and you promote the same talking points they do. So tell me, how is that any different from the system you claim to criticize? A direct hit. If Ryan hesitated, even for a second, it would confirm every doubt. But Ryan? He just smiled, and in that moment, Alex knew. He had walked into another trap. Ryan leaned forward slightly, his voice cool, calculated. I'm glad you brought that up, Alex, because it proves my point. Alex frowned, slightly thrown. Ryan continued. When a conservative gets backing, it's called dark money and corruption. He tilted his head. But when liberal candidates raise millions from Hollywood, tech billionaires, and foreign investors, it's called grassroots enthusiasm. Alex's smirk faded. The live chat exploded. Wait, he's right. Why does no one talk about this? Yo, I never thought about it like that. Damn, this kid just flipped the script again. Ryan wasn't done. He clasped his hands together. The real question, Alex, is why the media never applies the same standard to both sides. Alex opened his mouth to respond, but stopped, because deep down, he knew. He couldn't answer that, because the answer was obvious. The moment everything changed. The control room was in full panic mode, producers scrambling, whispering frantically into headsets. Alex's earpiece buzzed again. Wrap it up, now. He swallowed hard. This wasn't going to plan. He needed a way out, and fast. Ryan delivers the final blow. Alex took a slow breath. Ryan, let's shift gears. Ryan nodded slightly, waiting. Ready. Alex stared directly into the camera. He needed to pivot the conversation. A lot of people believe conservative rhetoric has become more extreme, more hostile, that it's fueling division. Would you take responsibility for contributing to the growing political divide in this country? A high-stakes question. If Ryan said yes, he admitted fault and looked weak. If he said no, he looked reckless, dangerous. But Ryan just let out a slow breath, unshaken. Then he responded with a question no one expected. Alex, let me ask you something. Alex's lips parted slightly. He wasn't used to being questioned. Ryan leaned in, his voice sharp and deliberate. Do you know which American president got the highest percentage of the black vote in U.S. history? The studio fell dead silent. Alex blinked. He hadn't expected that. But before he could speak, Ryan answered for him. Richard Nixon, in 1960. A murmur rippled through the studio. This wasn't what the audience was expecting. Alex shifted in his seat, frowning slightly. And your point? Ryan didn't blink. The Republican Party used to dominate the black vote. Even Martin Luther King Jr.'s father was a Republican. So what changed? He let the question hang. The audience was listening now. Ryan continued. Here's what most Americans don't know. In the 1960s, when Democrats realized they were losing support from the black community, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Great Society programs. Welfare, government aid, housing benefits, things that sounded great on paper. He let a small pause hang in the air before finishing. But what people don't talk about is how those same programs broke families apart, how they made government dependence more profitable than hard work. And over time, that shifted political loyalty. Alex's fingers curled slightly. This was not where he wanted this conversation to go. But Ryan? He wasn't done. So tell me, Alex, if conservatives are the ones dividing America, why is it that every time a black voter, a Hispanic voter, an immigrant speaks out in favor of conservative values, they get attacked, ridiculed, and labeled as traitors? Alex exhaled slowly. He had no answer, because for the first time in this entire interview, the truth was undeniable. The aftermath and the question no one can ignore. The interview wrapped. The second the camera light turned off, the control room erupted into chaos. Techs scrambled to adjust feeds. A producer rushed over with notes that Alex barely glanced at. Ryan? He calmly stood up, adjusted his blazer, and gave a polite nod. Thanks for having me, Alex. Then he turned and walked off set, as if he had just finished a casual conversation. Alex sat there, staring at the desk. His hands rested still, but his mind was racing, because he knew. The media had just lost control of the narrative, and Ryan Carter had just made history. Most Americans don't know that the black vote was once overwhelmingly Republican. Most Americans don't realize how government programs shaped modern political divisions. Most Americans never ask, why are people who leave the Democratic Party treated like enemies? So now we ask you, have you ever questioned why certain narratives are repeated over and over in the media? Have you noticed how some conversations never get airtime? And most importantly, what else haven't they told you? Let us know in the comments. And stay tuned, because after tonight, everything is about to change. The red light on the camera blinked off. The interview was over, but the consequences were just beginning. The studio in chaos. The second the segment ended, the control room erupted. Producers shouted over one another, frantically analyzing what had just happened. The audio technician ripped off his headset, shaking his head. Did we just lose control of that interview? A junior producer nervously checked the live audience engagement data on her screen. Spike after spike. Engagement was through the roof, but not in the way they had expected. This wasn't an audience laughing at a conservative getting embarrassed on national television. This was an audience watching a liberal host get outmaneuvered in real time. And the worst part? They knew it. Alex Grayson, sitting in defeat. Alex Grayson hadn't moved. He sat at the desk, his hands resting flat, staring down at the polished surface. His entire career was built on one thing: control. Control over the narrative. Control over the conversation. Control over the way people perceived reality. But tonight, he had lost that control. The control room chatter blurred into a distant hum as he reached for his phone. The screen lit up instantly. Hundreds of notifications, tweets, texts, news alerts. His network executives weren't even giving him time to recover. A message from the top boss blinked on the screen. "We need to talk, now." His jaw tightened. This wasn't just a bad interview. This was a career moment he might never live down. Alex took a slow breath, his fingers tightening around his phone, because he already knew what was waiting for him. Social media erupts. Within minutes, the clips were everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Telegram. Some users posted unedited segments, letting Ryan's responses speak for themselves. Others had added dramatic music, zooming in on Alex's face when he realized he had lost control. One viral clip had a caption in bold white letters: "When the media trap backfires." Another clip simply said, "Why is this kid making more sense than our politicians?" And the numbers? They were skyrocketing. Millions of views within the first hour, tens of thousands of comments. The public wasn't just watching, they were talking. The split reaction, a narrative war, begins. The response split into two camps. The conservative reaction: "This is why people don't trust the media anymore. Ryan Carter just gave the best answers I've ever heard on TV. Liberal hosts can't handle real debates." The progressive damage control: "The kid was just well rehearsed, nothing more." Ryan didn't win. Alex was just being too nice. We should stop giving platforms to people like this. But one comment stood out, from a left-wing journalist no less. "I don't even agree with this kid, but damn, he owned that interview." And that was the problem. Even people who didn't like Ryan could see what had happened. Alex hadn't been outshouted. Alex hadn't been bullied. Alex had been exposed. The corporate fallout, damage control in action. Inside LNN's executive boardroom, the atmosphere was tense. A massive flat screen on the wall replayed the most viral moments from the interview. Alex sat at the long, glass-topped conference table, surrounded by suits who weren't here to comfort him. They were here to assess the damage. One executive, an older man with silver hair and a deep frown, leaned forward. This wasn't just a bad interview, it was a failure of control. Another added, "We lost the narrative. That's unacceptable." Alex swallowed hard. He had spent years critiquing politicians who fumbled under pressure. Now, he was the one on trial. A PR strategist shifted uncomfortably. "We need to pivot, quickly. We can't let this spiral into a larger conversation about media bias." Alex already knew what was coming next: how the media covers its own failures. The playbook was simple. When a conservative makes a mistake, 24/7 media coverage, panel discussions, think pieces. What this says about the right-wing movement. When a liberal gets embarrassed, silence, downplay it, move on. If that doesn't work, reframe the story. A PR consultant flipped open a folder laying out the 3-step damage control strategy. Number 1. Minimize the losses. Frame Ryan as an extremist, a radical conservative voice who sounds smart but spreads dangerous rhetoric. Number 2. Attack the messenger. Dig into his past, find something controversial, an old tweet, a past association, anything to discredit him. Number 3. Shift the focus. Instead of analyzing Alex's failure, let's talk about the dangers of right-wing media manipulation. Alex's gut twisted. They weren't trying to correct the record. They were trying to erase the moment entirely. But there was just one problem. Millions of people had already seen it, and they weren't going to forget. A deeper question. No one asks. Think about this. When was the last time the media admitted they were wrong? Have you ever seen them say, "You know what? We got that story completely backward"? Have you ever heard them apologize for smearing someone unfairly before they were forced to? Have you ever wondered why certain stories disappear overnight while others are amplified for weeks? And most importantly, if the media can shape reality, if they can decide what you focus on, if they can erase their own mistakes, how much of what you believe is actually real? Think about that and let us know what you think in the comments. Because after tonight, the truth is out, and they can't take it back. The interview that wouldn't die. It had been a full week since Ryan Carter sat across from Alex Grayson on live television. But the story wasn't going away. Normally, when a liberal host lost control of an interview, the media's strategy was simple. Bury the clip. Control the headlines. Pretend it never happened. But this time, it wasn't working. Because the people had already seen it, and they weren't letting it go. The narrative breakdown. Within days, the segment had been clipped into thousands of viral TikTok and YouTube shorts, analyzed in independent media outlets, both conservative and neutral, discussed by former left-wing journalists who admitted something felt off. Even moderate viewers, people who didn't care about politics, were raising their eyebrows. Wait, why are they trying so hard to silence this kid? Why aren't they just debating him fairly? If he was wrong, wouldn't it be easy to prove? The questions weren't stopping, and for the first time in a long time, people outside the political bubble were waking up. The desperate attempts to regain control, LNN executives tried everything to contain the damage. Step 1. The hit pieces. Within 48 hours, mainstream media outlets flooded the internet with articles like "The Rise of Young Right-Wing Extremism in America," "How Social Media is Radicalizing Teens Like Ryan Carter." Experts warn a new generation of MAGA hardliners is coming. They couldn't dispute the facts, so instead, they tried to scare people away from even listening. Step 2. The social media suppression Twitter X started throttling posts related to Ryan's interview. Facebook fact-checkers labeled clips as lacking context. YouTube suddenly demonetized channels covering it too aggressively. And yet, the views kept rising. Step 3. Attack Ryan personally. When attacking his arguments didn't work, they went after him directly. They dug into his past. An old high school essay surfaced. A questionable retweet from years ago was dissected. CNN even ran a special segment questioning his real motivations. But here's what they didn't expect. The public wasn't buying it, because by now they had seen this pattern before. Attack, discredit, silence. It wasn't working anymore. Ryan Carter, more powerful than before. While LNN scrambled to recover, Ryan Carter was doing something unexpected. Nothing. He didn't apologize. He didn't go on an apology tour. He didn't panic. Instead, he simply kept speaking. Every attempt to smear him only made him stronger. His Twitter X following tripled. His YouTube channel hit 1 million subscribers overnight. His podcast was now topping the charts. They had tried to destroy him. Instead, they made him unstoppable. And that was the real story. For decades, the mainstream media has controlled the narrative. But now, for the first time in modern history, that control is breaking. And that leads to the most important question of all. If they've manipulated one conversation, how many more have they controlled? If they've buried one debate, how many others have they erased? If they've lied about this, what else aren't they telling you? Think about that. Really think about it, because once you start questioning the official narrative, you start seeing the patterns everywhere. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. If you've read this far, you now face a choice. You can walk away, pretend this was just another viral moment, and move on. Or you can start asking the questions you were never supposed to ask. So let's settle this right now. Do you trust the media? Do you believe they tell the full story? Or do you think, just maybe, they control what you're allowed to know? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're ready to start thinking for yourself, like, share, subscribe. Because this is just the beginning. The end. Or the beginning. They wanted to silence the truth. Instead, they made it louder. What happens next is up to you.